Okay, hello. Want to talk about sleep today. It's a very dynamic process that we all go through, typically once a day. It's not unique to us. Every living organism sleeps. Certainly you would call it sleep in a dog and a cat. In a mushroom, you would not call it sleep. But if you examine even plants, there's periods of activity followed by periods of quiescence. So we're going to talk about sleep and try to ask ourselves the questions why we sleep. Sleep's very complicated. It's not just simply going offline. It's not just simply your brain not generating you anymore for 8 hours. It's more complex than that. Let's look at our attention levels to external and internal stimuli during the waking hours, okay? And we have this impression that we're at a standard level, at a high level of attentiveness when our eyes are open and we're awake. And that's not the case, actually. We oscillate in 90-minute rhythms between periods of higher and lower attention, and these are called ultradian rhythms. Then, when, let's say for the sake of argument, that's 10 o'clock in the evening, when that happens, we start to feel sleepy. And we start to feel sleepy because of environmental cues that have been called Zeitgebers, time givers. And these environmental cues are differences in traffic patterns, the fact that we ate dinner, the 11 o'clock news is on, the birds stop singing their songs. But the biggest environmental cue that tells us it's time to go to sleep is it gets dark outside. And when that happens, of course, our eyes detect this and signal our hypothalamus that it's dark. And the hypothalamus signals our pineal gland to secrete melatonin. And this hormone makes us feel sleepy. And we're in bed, it's 10 o'clock, we're feeling sleepy, and then something magical happens that we lose our attentiveness to external and internal stimuli. We actually are asleep now. And how would you know? You don't know just by looking at the subject. You have pretended, as I have, that we're asleep when mom comes into the room and says, hey, it's time to go to school or to work. How do you know someone's asleep? Not by observation, but by measurement of brain electrical activity. The measurement of brain electrical activity occurs when you place an electrode on the head, and the other end of that wire you put it through some filters and an amplifier, and you notice these different waves. Some are called beta, some are called alpha, and these waves indicate that you're awake. When your brain actually goes to sleep, you produce different kinds of voltages, different kinds of waveforms. There's a different signature, a fingerprint of sleep, and those are called sleep spindles. Now we know the subject is asleep. It's a shallow kind of sleep, and if we clap our hands or say their name, they'll wake up. But let's not do that. Let's let the subject just go into a deeper form of sleep. Stage 3. Stage 4. Now they're in a restful type of sleep where they're less likely to awaken to environmental sounds. It still could happen if you're a parent and you have a child in a distant room and the child vocalizes. You'll hear the child even though you're in stage 4 sleep. But for all practical purposes, you're not as attentive to stimuli. You're in this state of stage 4 restful sleep for 90 minutes. Then you start waking up. And you don't wake up typically unless your bladder is full or your hand is caught under your head or something. You don't wake up. You still stay asleep, but it's a very shallow kind of sleep. We call that REM sleep, R-E-M. It stands for rapid eye movements. So one of the characteristics of REM sleep is that your eyes are moving rapidly. And you can watch someone in REM sleep move their eyes really rapidly under their lids. It's a little spooky. If you lift the arm of that individual who's in REM sleep, it'll fall back to the pillow in a very relaxed way because you're paralyzed in REM sleep. Thank God. We'll find out why later. Your brain is incredibly active in REM sleep, much more active than when you are awake. And finally, if you can awaken someone in REM sleep, and you should be able to because it's a very shallow kind of sleep, they'll nearly always tell you a dream, a cognitive event that's happening. So we got a problem here. Because most of us think that sleep is needed to feel refreshed, to feel rejuvenated, so you can think straight. And that's certainly the case. That's one of the things that sleep does. But we're going to find out that's one of the things the deep sleep does, stages 3 and 4. So that's where you synthesize proteins and repair tissue damage. That's where you get your restful night's sleep in stages 3 and 4. So why do we have to do REM sleep? Why do we have to dream? Not just for the first, not just the period after the 90 minutes. We dream 4 or 5 dream periods a night. What's the purpose of that? Well, there are different theories of dreaming. One of the older theories, Sigmund Freud, you know about him, he thought everything had to do with sex and aggression. He thinks that we're dreaming in order to express sexual desires that we don't express during the day. And the evidence that he has is that blood flows to the genitals. And so in the male, you can see that as an erection. In the female, you'd have to measure it. And, the police would be called, and it would be a bad thing. But anyway, blood flows to the genitals. So why would that happen? Unless dreams had to do with sleep. Unless dreams had to do with sex, excuse me. So we've all had sexual dreams, but no one has sexual dreams every night, 4 or 5 dream periods a night. But Freud says, yeah, you do. You're just disguising them from yourself. And they're all about sex. Even the locomotive going into the tunnel is about sex, but it's disguised. Okay. Okay, fine. So a good theory of dreams means you have to explain why infants dream way more than we do as adults, and why fetuses dream way more than infants. And it's hard to imagine a fetus and its unsophisticated psychology. It's hard to imagine a fetus dreaming about sex. Okay? Although they'll get their little fetal erections, it's got to be something else, or maybe something more complicated. So there are other theories of dreaming. Rosalind Cartwright, who's still alive and who's at the University of Chicago, talks about dreaming in order to resolve conflicts. If your mom dies today, God forbid, tonight, there's a good chance you're going to dream about it. If you're yelled at by your boss today, chances are you're going to dream about it tonight. We've all had that happen. But again, a good theory of dreaming must explain why other mammals dream. What conflict does chipmunk have? They dream, and they dream a lot. What conflicts do they have? They haven't saved enough nuts for winter. They're worrying about it. Hard to imagine. There's a really good theory of dreaming by Francis Crick, one of the 2 people who won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the DNA molecule. He's now working in cognitive neuroscience, trying to understand why we dream. And he says the dreams have to do with making memories, and there's some good evidence for that. Other theorists like Hobson and McCarley talk about dreaming as being just random. It's physiological process with no particular meaning. Why do we breathe? To stay alive. There's no psychological reason why. Why does blood flow from our heart to our brain? To keep the brain alive. There's no psychological reason why. And that's what they think about dreaming. They say that every 90 minutes, and this is true, the pons, that area of the brainstem that you read about in a previous unit, the pons turns on every 90 minutes or so. And it does a couple of things. It inhibits the spinal cord, so you can't move. Thank God, because it stimulates your entire brain randomly. The pons stimulates the occipital lobe back here, the part of the brain that's supposed to process visual information. Your eyes are closed, you're dreaming, and yet it's getting input. The temporal lobe's getting input. And the frontal lobe having to do with motor behaviors, getting input. And so you'd be moving around if it wasn't for an in spinal cord inhibition. So why do we dream? According to Hobson and McCarley, the brain is activated, and we're trying to make some sense out of that activation. And the sense that we make, the story that we weave out of the chaos, is a dream. And that's why our dreams are not very logical. That's why they're not very sequential. That's why there's a lot of bizarreness and changes of scenes, because our brain is struggling to take these random inputs from the pons and weave them into a coherent story. Well, we have 4 or 5 dream periods a night, 4 or 5 stage 3 and 4 periods of night, and now we wake up. And we find that sometimes we remember a dream and sometimes we don't. None of us remember all 5 dreams a night, 365 days a year, 1,800 dreams that we have. No one remembers 1,800 dreams. The best of us maybe will remember 200. So if they're so important, why are they why are we not able to remember them? If you want to remember a dream and you don't, you're probably not waking up during a dream. You're waking up sometime after a dream, and dream amnesia is a very common thing. That's what I wanted to say about sleep. And thank you for listening. I'm sorry I look like this. What?
You didn't just say, sorry I look like this.
Well, it'll make them laugh, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Stop capture.
Mm-hmm.